Welcome, folks. We're just going to take a moment to let people file in and then we'll get started. We're so grateful you're joining us here today. Hello, all, and welcome. We are so thrilled you're joining us for Artistic Eye, seeing the world through Mara Superior's ceramic art. I'm so grateful to be here with our panelists today, and I'm here to welcome you. My name is Kat Redness. I'm the Public Programs Educator for Shelburne Museum. I want to start us first by a land acknowledgement. Shelburne Museum is located upon land sacred to the Western Abnaki people. Called Ndakana, or our homeland, this place has long served as an important site of meeting and cultural exchange. We honor and celebrate the Abnaki's rich history as the traditional and ongoing stewards of these lands and waters. We remember that this land is unceded and recognize the enduring injustices rooted in colonialism and systemic oppression faced by Indigenous peoples. With humility and gratitude, we remain committed to sustaining meaningful relationships with Indigenous peoples to share this land as a place to gather, learn, and thrive. Thank you for taking that moment with me. Again, welcome to our webinar today. A few just brief housekeeping items. If you'd like to ask questions at any point, please feel free to put those in the Q&A. I'll be monitoring those. We will do a Q&A section at the end of the webinar, so we'll hold those. So please feel free if something comes up as you're seeing slides or hearing Kory or Mara talk, please feel free to put that right in Q&A and we will visit those at the end of the webinar. There is also the ability to put captions on. That's at the bottom of your screen. So if you would like to use captions, feel free to toggle that on right now. And it is my pleasure. I get to introduce my dear colleague and a phenomenal human being, a brilliant human who I get to share my days with, Kory Rogers, who is the Francie and John Downing Senior Curator of American Art. Kory, thank you so much for being here, and I can't wait to hear what you and Mara have in store for us.
Thank you for that kind introduction, Kat. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. We're so glad that you joined us for this special program, which previews Mara Superior's upcoming exhibition, Porcelain Love Letters, The Art of Mara Superior, that will open here at Shelburne Museum on May 11th and be on view through October 26th. It's my privilege to introduce the fabulous and delightful Mara Superior, a distinguished ceramic artist whose imaginative work in porcelain has earned her widespread recognition in the world of contemporary ceramics. Through intricately modeled forms and exquisitely painted imagery, Superior explores a wide range of personal and cultural themes, from love and domesticity to pressing political and ecological concerns. Her signature romantic language, grounded in historical ornament and narrative, offers a rich, witty commentary on the present. Her work is held in many major public collections, including the Renwick Gallery of the Smithsonian American Art Museum, the Museum of Arts and Design in New York City, the Philadelphia Museum of Art, and the White House Collection of American Craft. In 2018, with the support of the Kohler Foundation, her work was gifted to 15 museums nationwide, culminating in the Racine Art Museum's 2020 exhibition, Collection Focus Mara Superior. She has received numerous accolades, including a National Endowment for the Arts Fellowship and the prestigious Guljegard Residency in Denmark. With that, I want to welcome Mara. Hi, Mara. How are you?
Hi, hi. Thank you so much for inviting me to have this exhibition, Kory.
Oh, are you kidding me? You're one of
Your
my favorite
choice
people. Yeah.
to invite me, and I'm thrilled and honored.
Thank you. I often preface when I'm talking about you to people that you and I are birthday buddies, that we share the same birthday. And so that sort of forged this connection that I think has not only informed our personal but also our professional relationship, which has been great. Mara, I just wanted to start off with some early information about your background, how you grew up, how you became an artist. And so I think for you and many people, your education with art sort of started with the famous Metropolitan Museum of Art. Can you tell me a little bit about like your association with it, how it all started for you?
Well, I was so lucky to have been born in New York City, and um, the Met was always a part of my life. New York is filled with so much incredible cultural stimulation, ethnic diversity, and my first remembrances of going to the Met were school bus trips in elementary school. Um, Going with a busload of little children, like fifth graders, to that special below ground entrance for all the school buses in New York. And I was just overcome by the beauty of all of these objects. And very early on, I knew that this would be my life's work, that I wanted to make beautiful things. And my middle school teachers encouraged me to apply to the special arts high schools in New York, in Manhattan. I did. I got into the High School of Art and Design. So I was in high school in New York for 4 years. And my parents moved to Manhattan, and we moved about 6 blocks away from the Met on 86th Street and First, between First and Second Avenue. So I could easily walk there on weekends and visit current exhibitions and the entire permanent collection. And it was my local museum. I didn't take it for granted, but I was just, that was a given. It was my local museum and I loved it. And I was on my way in an art school at a very young age, and my course was set. So I couldn't have been in a better location than New York City as a
Yeah,
young student.
that's amazing. And so your first artistic interests or pursuits, you were looking more at fine art as opposed to working with ceramics. Can you tell us a little bit about your background as a painter?
Yes, I was always a two-dimensional person. One of the groups of collections that I was attracted to and loved at the Met were the Egyptian collections. And the the elements of art that are exhibited in Egyptology, the flat space, shape, line, pattern, were elements that I was interested in working with, as opposed to form and other things. So I'm forgetting the question. What
Oh,
was
it's
it?
okay. I was just asking if you could tell us about how you started out as a painter.
How I started out as a painter. Um, well, I went to Hartford Art School,
Mhm.
um, which is 2.5 hours north of Manhattan, and was in the painting department. But, well, at the Met, I love the Egyptology. I loved the 14th century, early Renaissance and Italian art, anything from 14th to 17th century. The Dutch masters, I just was overwhelmed as to how these magnificent creations could have ever been made. And I wasn't aware of the difference between decorative arts and fine arts at that time. And I looked at everything, and that was the wonder of the Met, to be able to look at everything and see everything without those delineations and hierarchies. Um, and I went to the Hartford Art School after graduating, uh, and I arrived in the early 70s when the conceptual artist Ryman had painted the white canvas. And at that time, people were saying that painting is dead. And I had wanted to learn how to paint like the old masters. And that was not going to happen for me at that school. So I got a conceptual art training and learned the difference between fine and decorative arts, and was trained in a lot of theory. And always went back to the nutrition of loving art history as a source of tremendous inspiration. About my own painting, I painted in school. I painted with oils and acrylics and watercolors. And I wasn't certain how I would earn a living. As a painter, as a young person, I wasn't resolved. After college, the first college experience, I did various art-related jobs. And then moving up, I'm getting ahead of ourselves here, about moving up to Northampton. My husband getting a teaching position at Hampshire College, moving up to Northampton, and meeting Leslie Farron, who was one of his students, and meeting some friends, Jane Hillman, who was working with porcelain and ceramics, that I saw this material that I could use as a three-dimensional paper or a canvas. And I was it was love at first sight. And I was on my way. And this is an exuberant expression. At this time, I was studying the history of ceramics. I'd had a lot of history of art. I was in art school my whole life, basically, because I married an art professor. But I went to Hartford Art School for 2 or 3 years, and then I transferred to the University of Connecticut, where there were vast offerings in art history and specific topics like the history of decorative arts, the history of photography. Tremendous offering. And I was studying the history of ceramics and trying to figure out how to make forms that were my own shapes. And I started with flattening out classical forms. And I see Egyptology in this piece. The patterns, the ribbons of pattern, the symbols. I loved the concepts of symbolism and hieroglyphics, and the design concept of Harawakaway, which is the fear of empty spaces. And I've always seemed to have that fear when I'm painting something, which is an Egyptological design practice. So here I have a string of my own symbols of studying books. The eye, the artist's eye. When you go to art school, one of the first things you're taught about is that you're beginning an adventure in attuned looking, and learning to see things by putting you in front of a still life and making you try to render it for days. They're forcing you to see things in a different way, or see things very carefully and intently. And that is what you are being trained to do. You're being trained to look, see, and think. And here, a sketchbook of ideas. The clock was ticking even then, looking at paintings, putting everything together. I was so excited to have found this real porcelain, true porcelain, that links me back to 400 AD in China. They use the same material. The materials that I use are English china clay, Grolic porcelain, which is literally a piece of English stone, and Cornwall stone, brown Cornwall stone glaze, which is also from England. So this is literally a piece of England, and it's fired in the method that was used in China, in a gas-fired atmospheric kiln in a reduction atmosphere. And that produces a specific kind of glassy, it is white glass because it's fired to 2,300 degrees. And that's why there's movement and something called clay memory, because the piece is really fluid.
Can you talk a little bit more about the technique that you're using, slab construction, and sort of the technical difficulties that come along with working in this mode?
Well, I always sidestep things based on my patience. And I had no patience to work on the wheel when I came up here, discovered ceramics, then went back to the University of Massachusetts, which was the only of the 5 college schools that had a ceramics department. And I studied ceramics there for 2 years. And I managed to talk myself out of ceramics 1 because I had no interest or aptitude for throwing on the wheel. And I managed to do it, and knew that I would be working with slabs as my chosen construction form because I could control shapes. And previous to all of this, I did a lot of sewing and soft sculpture, and I adapted the pattern making that I had done with fabric into a construction method that I used for building my shapes, and used a graph-like vellum architectural paper to draw patterns, cut them out, lay them on the leather hard slabs of clay, cut pieces out and construct them together. And this is the shape, the form, the shape is a riff on a classic amphora with the foot, the body, the ears, the neck, the lip, the anatomy of a vase, and taking me back to Greece today.
Yeah.
So that's what these shapes are about, where they came from. And the content that's on this piece is, at this time, the date is, I'm not sure, but I was very happy. My pieces always came out of a place of happiness. I had found my job. I had found my material that I was ecstatic about, and I am still using today. Over the course of 40 years, I have used 1 clay, 1 glaze, and 1 kiln method. So I stick with things. And I had, I loved New England. Oh, well, I'm a New Yorker, and somehow I got transplanted. Life is full of surprises. I went to college in Connecticut so that I could get back to New York as quickly as possible, but it didn't work out that way. And I found my partner, and he was an art professor, and he moved around from school to school from time to time. And I never got back to New York. And we had bought, I resisted, but I wound up completely embracing New England. He would say things to me like, I'm usually right. Stop fighting so hard. I'm usually right. And he was usually right. I did wind up loving it and loving New England, traveling around New England, the coast, Maine, Vermont. And I got a little house. I had adored, my dream was a federal or Georgian and center chimney colonial, but I managed to get a little Greek revival farmhouse, and we renovated it, and I was thrilled. to be renovating an old house and going to auctions and antiques and filling it with things and discovering gardening and the countryside and driving around and discovering a field of cows or sheep. And it was just very exciting from a pastoral and bucolic sense. It's the city girl comes to the country and is excited about it.
Yeah, that's
Um,
wonderful. So
so
this
this
piece,
is
Mara, oh, sorry. I was just gonna
no,
say
no,
this.
it's just about, you know, having the house
Mhm.
and the work to do. So it's just exuberance.
It's autobiographical, like
Yes.
many of your pieces are. And that even includes the next piece, which is the beautiful vase for harmony and amour. And again, this sort of plays into your idea of domesticity, housemaking, homemaking, and the New England landscape. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes, this is from the 1990s, and this is one of my jewel pieces in that our kiln, Leslie Farron founded East Street Clay Studio in 1982, I believe it is. And we started our studio with 7 mates. It's a part of a large renovated tobacco barn with printers and various other artists and a clay maker in the building. And I had to figure out how I would construct things. And as I said, this comes from fabric, but I did 2 different things, 2-sided shapes and boxy shapes. And this is an example of the 2-sided construction. And what I've always been after was this incredibly, elusively, to me, extraordinarily magnificent copper red fuming. And this piece is technically perfect, and they're few and far between. Copper in this atmospheric kiln has the range of disappearing to going into all sorts of shades of, and the worst is liver, but the best is this fuming pink and metallic mist over the white glassy porcelain. And I get very excited about this. I still do today. And, you know, it's a difficult thing to achieve this particular, it's just not controllable. Industry would not go near something like this because there's no way to absolutely control it. But I've had the privilege of living my life in high risk and keep trying because this is what's in my mind's eye when I'm making anything. So this is in my private collection. I've kept my special pieces that are either so good I can't possibly part with them, or it has some sort of flaw that I didn't think should be shown.
Yeah. So Mara, like you were saying about your two-sided pieces, like the stories that your pieces tell, there's always 2 sides of them, right? And so this is the other side of that vase, and it's about lovebirds. It's about swans. Does this
Well,
in any way mimic your relationship with Roy, or is there some
oh
inter
yeah, that was, yes, yes, I was spared having to date. I was so ecstatic that I had found my person, um, and just was a very, very happy within the context of a couple. And he could do all kinds of wonderful things that I couldn't do. He could do woodworking, all sorts of things, drawing, artist, or all kinds of things, musician. And when I'd heard the expression swans mate for life, you know, I just heard it and it became a great symbol for me to use in this symmetrical format for a couple.
It's a beautiful
And
story. So Mara, we want to think about a little bit about how you're flattening the form and how you're also using historical forms and changing them. And one of the great pieces I think that people will see in this exhibition is this lovely cocoa pot that you've created. And I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about how you like to play with forms. And one of the things I love about your work is that it's also self-referential. So you see the actual cocoa pot on the cocoa pot. It's sort of an inception moment. Um, just can you tell us a little bit more about how this came to be and sort of how it has another sort of companion piece, but and where that piece is in another collection? Does that make sense?
Um, a compa
So you've made two of these cocoa pots, and one
yeah,
of them was made specifically for.
is in the White House collection of American crafts. Hillary Clinton selected it. Well, actually, no. The curator of the Renwick at the time, who I am so sad that his name has escaped me at the moment, but he was the curator for a long time, invited me to that exhibition. But once again, here I was looking at books about the history of porcelain and ceramics and saw the cocoa pot. I'd been working with the teapot uh, as a form because I was working within the language of this material, making artwork about the material, uh, things that naturally would be made with these materials. So inevitably, I of course would move to the cocoa pot. Was a beautiful 18th century form. So of course I had to make one and try my hand at it. And these spouts, I made them. I always imagined they go down, but they didn't go down. They stayed up without props in the kiln. Um, and the self-referential thing is definitely from my 2 years at Hartford Art School and conceptual art thinking and training about, I held on to self-referential art.
Yeah.
Uh, and food presents itself with some almond cookies there on the platter beneath the cocoa pot and coin silverware above. I was getting attuned to antiques at this time and knew what I was looking at and felt very connected. I love history and art history and just was thrilled to be working with this material that had such a long history and lineage and all of the porcelain stories that go with porcelain. I just love the whole thing. Beginning in China, the Europeans imitating it for 300 years with tin glazed earthenware and the first factory in 1710 with Meissen, and then within 10 years there were factories all over Europe. I just love the whole history and tradition of porcelain, um, and the history and tradition of art, the history of painting. And this is the other side, a garden. Um,
Just a
just
beautiful,
all
beautiful
very
detail.
light and happy. Beautiful copper red is all I could ask for. A very good piece, a very good firing.
Mara, this technique that you use, this reduction kiln at high temperatures, it sort of limits your palette, right?
Yes,
To just a few colors.
yes, I have about 10 colors, which the limitations turn out to be an excellent. Everything else burns out at this temperature range. All that remains are the basic oxides of cobalt, copper, chrome green, and a few variations on that, variations of greens and blues. The lavender is very unusual, and a pink is very unusual that happens to work at that um, temperature range without burning out. But this turned out to be an excellent situation for me because in painting, when I did paint, I could spend endless amounts of time mixing colors and attempting to choose colors, mix little batches, mix larger batches to this turned out to be a wonderful limitation.
And every aspect of your work you cover it with, you know, these symbols, these imagery that you create. This is actually on the top of the tray that sits underneath the cocoa pot, which is really extraordinary.
And making them anthropomorphic.
Yeah.
You know, they're talking, they're doing crazy things. Those spouts, I mean, they're birds.
Yeah, they're wonderful. So Mara, one of the other things that you have in terms of series that you work on sort of pieces that are referential to your work, but are basically collections. Can you tell us sort of how these collection pieces sort of came about and what they mean to you?
Well, once again, this goes back to conceptual art training at Hartford Art School and self-referential theory about art, teapots about teapots, on a platter form, which all is within the same material and language of the material. As soon as I started doing ceramics or went back to the University of Massachusetts, one of the first things that I made was a sampler of my own and my fellow students' teapots. And that was the first. And it really has gone on since then. Since 1980, I've continued to make collections of teapots that I've made and historical collections of historical artworks, ceramic works.
Mhm.
So these are actually, the upper right is the cocoa pot. It's a little miniature version of the cocoa pot we just saw. And 5 of these teapots will be exhibited at the show at Shelburne, at the Shelburne Museum. And, you know, it took me several years to make all of these pots. And, you know, in combination with everything else I was making at the time. So, you know, several years later, I say, okay, I made this nice group of 6 pieces. It's time to make a collection.
Mhm.
Um, you know, early on, I've made collections of platters and other forms. But these
And
definitely speak because of the spouts.
yeah. Mara, am I correct in saying that this is the first time those 5 teapots will have been all together in the same place at once?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be a really wonderful. This is sort of like the Rosetta Stone to your playful teapot collection that you've created. The next thing that I wanted to move into, Mara, because the exhibition, the sort of thematic conceit of the exhibition is that these are really love letters, and your work is so autobiographical, and that there are areas that you absolutely love. And one of those areas that I think is very important to you, and people who follow you on Instagram will see it, that you're an amazing cook, that you grow a lot of your own ingredients in your garden, and that your love of food has also sort of generated another series within your body of work. And can you talk a little bit about your views on food and how it has influenced your work?
Well, food culture has been in the core, a core of my life since the very beginning. I love cooking. I'm a foodie. I love to cook, and I followed America's trajectory with food. This is a love letter to Julia Child. This is 1982, right when I left the University of Massachusetts studying ceramics. This is a very early piece. And one of the first early pieces I'm making is about food. Um, um, how far back do we want to go with my food story? It goes right back to the beginning because my grandfather was in the food business. I'm a third generation Italian American, and my grandfather came over probably running away from the fascists in Italy and the volcano, Mount Etna in Sicily, and somehow achieved his American dream pretty quickly and managed to purchase a brownstone in Brooklyn near Brooklyn College on Flatbush Avenue and opened an Italian food specialty shop and a fancy butcher shop. And the first 5 years of my life, my parents and I know it's me, but it just doesn't sound right. My parents and I lived in the apartment, one of the apartments above the shop. So my grandfather was my babysitter from time to time, and I would go and greet people in the shop, and he would sit me down at the packing table with big sheets of wrapping paper and two pencils, a red pencil and a black pencil, big waxy pencils. And I would do drawings, and he would slice me off paper thin sheets of American cheese from the slicer to give me sustenance for my artwork. And once again, coming back to being raised in New York, we would take long drives from our house to my grandmother's house every Sunday, and we would drive through so many various ethnic neighborhoods. And uh-oh, I'm losing my train of thought. Where did we? Anyway, this is a long story. It's the whole story of food in my life. But anyway, this is Mastering the Art of French Cooking came out when I went to college at Hartford Art School, really. And that was the book my best friend at Hartford Art School was a French girl. And we both bought Julia Child's book and started teaching ourselves French cuisine and technique, and had dinner parties on the weekends. And I followed America's food trajectory from France to opening the doors to Asian and Indian cuisine. I tried all of that. I was a restaurant person, and food and high quality ingredients was always a part of my life. My grandfather being in the food business. So I knew all about seasonal cooking and ingredients before Alice Waters explained the story to America. But America's been on a fantastic food trajectory since I was a child and has become one of the great food places on earth. And I continue to follow it along, and it's one of life's greatest pleasures. And I've made many relief pieces about food and the table and conviviality, entertaining.
Mara, travel also played an important role in your body of work, and this plate here sort of harkens back to the times when you and Roy would spend your summers in Italy, correct?
Yes. Yes, we had incredibly good fortune to spend 5 summers in the Tuscany region. A cousin of Roy's renovated a farmhouse, and he was on the academic schedule, and we were able to spend summers with her, taking day trips and drives all over Italy, Tuscany, from Rome to Florence, Umbria, all around. And it was the time of my life. And this piece represents a day trip from Siena, and we went to the Castello di Broglio, which is just, it's been in one family's existence since 1145. And everything, the landscaping is all so old in Italy. It just feels like a tapestry. And we took so many drives through what they call the green tapestry of Tuscany, with fields of vineyards and um, olive groves and cypress trees. And it's just magnificent driving around in the rolling hills. And the approach to this castle was so awe-inspiring. The architecture is all so, this is Romanesque, crenellation, enormous castle, and you can have wine tastings there. So it was an exhilarating day trip, and I was trying to record it the way a painter would make a watercolor or any other way to try to record an experience. And it has a lot of sprig decoration on it, the little bottles, and they all have labels. I don't remember if, it's exactly what sorts of wine is in the bottle, but, I've made and developed many, many sprig molds over the years because I love being able to use texture. And have made many artworks about our travels.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. I know in the exhibition we've sort of, because this is called Chianti, it's sort of exhibited in the food section of the exhibition, but it really is about your love of travel. And your love of travel, you created a series of large sculptural teapots based on your travel. Do you remember any of those, like the British teapot?
Oh, of course. Yeah, unfortunately, I don't think we have any pictures of those things. But yes, I planned my own grand tour with my husband. We made lists of what we wanted to see. It was all based on art historical and museum trips, and planned a Northern Renaissance trip uh, through the Netherlands, Belgium, Bruges, through Normandy, and back to Paris. And then we've spent a lot of time with the Italian Renaissance in Florence, Italy. And the Renaissance is one of my favorite periods in that it was a time of uh, renewed, going back to Greece and Rome. It was a classical revival after the Dark Ages, the Middle Ages, and the plague. And I mean, some of the foundations of Western art were made during that time. Scientific development. It was just a great time for humanity. And it was a time in art in Italy where they were moving away a bit from the church and just religious art into a more humanistic and mythological, going back, thinking about. And I feel with some of my pieces, I'm going back and doing another of my own classical revivals with the little old masters. And just, I feel that's where the nourishment is in my artistic inspirations. It's through art history. Contemporary art is like cotton candy. It's fun, it's interesting, but the protein is in history.
Great. So Mara, we've actually hit our time limit here, and there's so many more pieces that we had in our slideshow. And what I'll say to those of you who are watching this is that you'll just have to come and see the exhibition for yourself to see the breadth and the depth of what Mara's work consists of. The exhibition will feature pieces that are from her early part of her career, all the way up to her current series that she was just referencing with this reinterpreting the Renaissance nude. She has a piece by Lucas Cranach, as well as a piece that's sort of based after Sandro Botticelli's Birth of Venus. And so we hope you will all come and visit. But right now, I think we'll turn it back over to Kat, who is going to handle the Q&A. Thank you, Kat. Thanks.
Hi, all. And so, also, Kory, there is a chance we may be able to share a few more of those. So just keep that handy in case. One, Leslie Farron is on with us today and wanted to share that the curator of the White House collection was Michael W. Monroe. So that is the answer to that
Thank you,
question.
Leslie. Thank
Yes.
you. Thank you. Yes, Michael. Oh, thank you.
So great. Mara, a question that we have for you. We have a couple, and feel free to put more questions in the Q&A. One person asks, what makes you decide to keep a piece for your personal collection?
I keep it because I love it. I can't part with it. It's not, each piece, because of this atmospheric um, firing, is unique to the firing. And I keep it because I love it, or I keep it because it has a flaw.
Hmm.
Does that answer that?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I've
So,
kept a lot of things because I've loved a lot of things.
yeah.
It was really nice when we went to go visit Mara for the first time at her house in Western Massachusetts. Kay Owen, the exhibition coordinator, and I went to visit Mara and Leslie. And you walk into her house, and every surface is covered with her art. And I love it when you see an artist who lives with their own work, because you can tell that they really appreciate what they do and they have that sort of
Mm.
connection to their work. And it was just like being a kid in a candy shop. We went around and we took photos of every inch of her home, and that's how we sort of based the themes for the exhibition off of those photographs, which is really lovely.
Mm. Mm. Amazing. So I have, yeah, we have a few more questions coming in and some comments. Corey, this may be a you question, and just a clarification, will there be a catalog for this upcoming show, or do you want to talk a little bit about what are some of the other ways folks can access this?
Yeah, sadly, there won't be a catalog, but there will be other ways of engaging with the exhibition. The museum is preparing to launch an enhanced website for Mara, which sort of looks at some of her important pieces in the exhibitions, and especially those ones that have multiple sides. They sort of talk about the various narratives on every physical facet of her work. The piece that we're looking at right now in the background, The Pursuit of Happiness, was a commissioned piece for Mara, and it's really beautifully detailed. It's a patriotic piece. It's sort of an apolitical piece, and we have a little handout, something that a physical takeaway that visitors will be able to take with them, and it sort of dives into the deeper sort of symbolism of the different aspects of its design. Yeah, there's multiple ways. We'll be doing a lot of Instagram posts, both Mara and myself, the museum, based off of Mara's work. So, but the best way to interact with the exhibition is to come see it yourself.
Mm. May 10th, we open May 10th. We're so excited to have Mara's work here. Mara, somebody's bringing up, you talked about the dichotomy between fine and decorative art in the art world. They're asking if you can talk a little bit more about this, and whether you think that divide is limiting, or if there's something productive about those different categories of art.
Well, as I was saying, going to the Met, it being an encyclopedic museum, it contains everything. And going there, certainly as a school child,
Mhm.
I had no idea of anything. It wasn't until I went to art school that I heard about the distinction and hierarchy, distinction. And I think that's all sort of beginning to fall away. Now people are making fine art with all sorts of other materials other than paint and traditional sculptural materials. So I didn't see the distinction early on. Then in art school, you learn about the distinctions and then you let them fade away. I think they're in a place of fading away now with contemporary art.
Mm. Thank you so much for that answer. And we have a comment here. Rita loves your work and is grateful for this exhibition. Rita also graduated from Hampshire College, and Roy Superior was one of their favorite professors. So a little shout out there.
Fantastic.
Oh,
Fantastic. Yes, we've interacted with a lot of students um, over the course of a 40-year career for him.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so there are a lot of students out there.
Oh. Someone else is wondering, how do you use your collection of antique ceramics in your work?
I have antique ceramics at home. I love using them living with antique ceramics.
Mm,
Um, I don't really use antique ceramics in my work. I might make a replica
yeah.
of something antique, but they're not, I don't um, use antiques. Maybe I don't understand the
No,
question.
I think you've spoken about living with them. I think that's beautiful
I
too.
live with antique
Yeah.
ceramics of all kinds that are my favorites. I live with faience and I eat on Chinese Canton blue and white plates. Uh, It just enriches the whole idea of
Mm,
knowing and appreciating the history of ceramics.
mm, wonderful. An attendee is asking, could you speak a little bit more about your artistic process? For instance, they're wondering if you begin your work with sketches or paintings. I think especially around some of your symbolism, or maybe even as you're thinking about the shape. What's your early process in before you're
Rough,
actually?
rough drawings.
Yeah.
They're idea drawings. They just come to me. I always carry around a sketchbook and they're the roughest, but I know what I'm doing. I mean, I know what the very rough things are. And the things drawings get continually more refined until you're at the stage where you're thinking about scale and a pattern, and then it becomes more exact. But things just start with an idea and a quick sketch.
Beautiful. Thanks for sharing that. Um, we have potentially a young artist on our webinar today that's asking if you have any advice for a young person who's thinking about becoming a ceramic artist.
It's such an exciting material to work with.
Mm,
So exciting because you can make anything with it. You can eat your meal on a plate and it's so exciting. The kilns are always Christmas morning. You know, every time you open a kiln, no matter how long you've been doing the job, it's a surprise. Even if you're working with an electric kiln, it's always a surprise and exciting to open a kiln. You can make anything from jewelry to sculpture to a cup to drink your coffee with. It's just a marvelous material.
mm. I loved one of the things I noted while you were talking, you talked about this concept of clay memory. Do you mind speaking a little bit more about the concept of clay memory as you're creating with clay?
Well, porcelain has to be handled very specifically in that you don't want to move a slab of clay around too much
Mhm.
because there's a particle alignment in a slab. And if you stretch it, the particle alignment changes. And in the firing, when it melts, it will remember that movement. And you'll wind up getting like uh, something warped in
Mm,
a place that it looks fine when it's bisked and dry. Bisque firing is the first firing, and that's when I draw on an object with pencil and then start painting on it with ceramic underglazes and oxides. You won't see the warping until the final firing when everything is done, all the work is in it, and it comes out of the kiln and it has this memory of the time you moved. So most slabs are inverted.
Mm.
It's like a board on top of a slab on a board on top of a slab, and you're inverting slabs rather than lifting them and moving them around.
Mm.
That doesn't apply so much to other materials and lower fire materials. You can handle them more casually because they're not being fired to such maturity where they're going to have that clay memory.
Mm. Thanks so much for going through that. Oh, let me check. We just had another comment come in. You mentioned not always knowing what will happen in the kiln. Despite all of your most careful preparation, do you have any happy accidents that took place at any stage in your creative process
There are
that you're willing to
accidents in every
share?
film. Yes, yes. That's part of the business. That's
Mhm.
part of you're not sure, maybe it's working with these particular materials in an atmospheric kiln, you're bound to have surprises,
Mm.
accidents. Sometimes accidents are very good, um, and they lead you into different directions.
Can I jump in here about one of the little accidents that I
Yeah,
love
please
that's in the
do.
show? And I'm going through the slideshow here just to show you some of the pieces, but there's one in particular that I love that I think or I feel is a happy accident for Mara's work. And that's the One Planet Earth platter. And that's because in the kiln, Mara, please correct me if I'm wrong, that beautiful wide rim sort of bowed a little bit. And in the final piece, it gives it this convex shape that mimics the shape of the earth. And it just seems like that was something that was, I'm assuming, was unintentional, correct, Mara?
Mara's
But
nodding a big yes to
but it
that.
has this really
Yeah.
dramatic and beautiful physical effect.
It's a wall piece, so you know, one doesn't notice it so much. I hadn't imagined, but the weight of that rim being so wide and heavy, it did melt down a bit. And it didn't touch the shelf, it didn't go all the way, but it went down further than I had expected it to.
Mm.
Beautiful piece.
Beautiful piece. We are ending our time here. I want to give Mara and Kory both an opportunity to just share anything they'd like to share, any last thoughts, any last pieces you'd like to share with us, anything you'd like to say about the exhibition, just a last moment. Yeah.
Mara, do you have anything you would like to share?
I'm just thankful and grateful to being a part of this. And I couldn't have had a better group of people, Kory, to work with in putting this all together. You've made it so easy and a delight to work with. And I thank you so much for everything you've done, all of your
Oh,
thinking, writing, enthusiasm. You're a wonderful curator.
oh, well, thank you. And you are an amazing artist to work with, let me tell you. And it always helps when the artist's personality matches the beauty of the work that they create. And that is what this also has been all about for me. And, this has been a show that has sort of, buoyed my spirits times when I needed it. And I think it'll have the same effect for people who come and see it in person.
That's a beautiful finish. Thank you both for your generosity of time and sharing and just showing up in such an authentic way to share this incredible art. And Mara, we just couldn't be happier to have you on campus this season. And I agree with Kory. There is such a balance of the beauty in your art and the beauty of you as a human and that heart, and you can feel it in your artwork and just in your presence. And so thank you so much for being the person you are and the artist you are. Thank you for taking the time to do this. Folks, I just want to give a shout out. We have another webinar coming up on April 23rd. We'll be with curator Katie Wood-Kirchhoff talking about Daliv Ipkar, who is another exhibiting artist this season at Shelburne Museum, and that will be called Daliv Ipkar's Whiskers, Wings, and Whispering Things. And you can sign up for that on our website. I also want to thank always our members and our donors who make it possible for us to keep events like this free and open to the public. We're so grateful for the support they give us to make sure that our community has access to art and artists. And so if you're ever interested in becoming a member or becoming a donor, please check out our website. And that allows us to do incredible programs like this with the human beings like Kory and Mara, who, again, I one last time want to just express my immense gratitude to both of you, and also to Shayna and Issa, and to Mara's team and Leslie Farron's team for all the behind the scenes work that went into this. Immense gratitude from me for being such incredible collaborators. And thank you so much for sharing yourself, your art, and who you are. And everyone, thank you to Mara Superior. We are so excited to have you here this season. Thanks,
Amen.
everyone. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you soon. Have a wonderful day.